Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have worked for, I guess, the better part of the last 9 months with my friend from Connecticut. He is always prepared. He is thorough. He is every bit as effective as a questioner in private as he is in public. But I would tell my friend from Connecticut, there were Republicans who told President Trump that he was wrong when he accused President Obama of wiretapping Trump Tower. There were Republicans who said it contemporaneous with the claim. So I would just ask my friend from Connecticut, no matter how heated the political debate may get, don't ever lose sight of that fairness and don't lump everyone together. There were Republicans who said there is no evidence to support that, and if there is, produce it immediately. To my friend from California, I would say you are correct. You are correct. We have spent the better part of the last 9 months looking at issues unrelated with this precise reauthorization. But my friend from California is also experienced and bright enough to know that if the problems can manifest themselves in one surveillance program, they can certainly manifest themselves in another, because it's the same techniques, it's the same principles, it's the same players. So why would we wait until similar problems manifest themselves? Why not fix it before it happens? The issues, the word illegal was used in connection with unmasking. There's no illegal unmaskings. They may violate policy, they may be improper. It's not against the law to do it. But we've both been in the room, all three of us have been in the room, when principals with almost precisely the same job description had wildly disparate unmasking numbers. That doesn't mean a crime was committed. It doesn't even mean the motive was nefarious. What it does mean is there are different policies and paradigms being applied to the request to unmask. And what was most troubling to me, and I know it was to my two friends on the other side of the aisle, is in some instances the principal himself or herself was not even aware that the unmasking request had been made. That's not what we want. If we're going to trust a national security advisor, we're going to trust an attorney general with the power to unmask a fellow citizen's name, at least make sure it is the principal doing it. And we were all there. And we were all, I think, surprised at the testimony. So my question to my friends would be this: why wait until similar problems manifest themselves? This president, unless he is going to mirror Grover Cleveland, is never going to go back through another transition. Unless we have another non-successive presidency, he's not going to go back through transition. So this has nothing to do with President Trump. He's not going to go back through it. It has to do with the next Democrat administration, the next Republican one. And more than that, it has to do, it wasn't 10 months ago, we sat in this room with Admiral Rogers and Director Comey, and we put them on notice that this agreement, this tacit agreement that we have between government and the American people, that we're going to empower you, but you have to be good stewards of that power. And we put them on notice that there were issues. And here we are in December, 8 months later, discussing those very issues. And if they have taken steps to resolve them, those steps have been lost on me. So it is our responsibility to do it. And yes, I will yield to my friend from California. But what I would ask him is, why would we wait until similar issues manifest themselves in this surveillance program?
And I would ask my colleague, why did you wait? You're in the majority. You could have introduced an unmasking bill. You could have taken it up at any time. Why wait until this program is about to sunset and try to jam it in the bill if you think this is such a good and important idea? And I'll tell you the answer: because this is a political messaging tool that, if it were in a standalone bill, would not get bipartisan support, but by putting it in a must-pass program.
This is the first reauthorization that I have participated in since I've been on HPSI. As my friend from California knows, this is my first time on HPSI. So you're welcome to query my colleagues as to why they haven't done it in the past, but this is my first opportunity to do it. So I'm not a Johnny-come-lately to it. I was talking about it to Comey and Rogers, having been on this committee for a month. So you can query my colleagues, But you and I both know this is the first time I've been through a reauthorization on this program.
And I'm not questioning my colleagues' good faith here. I'm just saying, if this was as pressing an issue as my colleagues in the majority make out, there was nothing preventing them over the last 6 months from introducing a bill on the subject. But by putting it in a must-pass bill, a must-pass program, the effort is to shoehorn bipartisan support for a partisan narrative, and that is simply not what this should be used for.
Time has expired. Anybody wish to be heard over here before we get to amendments? Ms. Spear.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You know, I must say that I really value every member of this committee. And I do think we're all people of goodwill. And I think this dialogue we're having right now would be really constructive if we could talk about it separate from 702. Because Mr. Gowdy is making some good points. There's many things that I think we could come to an agreement on. But I do worry that, separate and distinct from that, we have not fully dealt with this measure in a manner that is consistent with what the American people would want. Since 2012, there have been a significant number of Americans who've been improperly swept up in surveillance activities that the law says must not target Americans, and that this information is retained for years. This improperly obtained information has been used in court against Americans charged with crimes that have nothing to do with national security, with no warrants and without the required notification to the defense. Leaving aside the unmasking language also included in the bill, civil liberty groups have assessed that the so-called fixes in this bill would be worse than no fixes at all. There is no reason for this to be the case. There have been numerous other FISA reauthorization bills introduced in both chambers of Congress, many of which contain elements with merit that should receive debate on the floor. This is far too serious of a matter to ram a renewal of these authorities through on a ridiculously short timeline. This bill was shared with my office less than 24 hours ago. And here we are, marking up legislation that has incredibly profound constitutional implications for all Americans, and business implications, I might add. My concerns are shared widely by both sides of the aisle, and there's no reason that we can't work together to fix these problems. We could be sitting here thoughtfully debating the precarious balance between security and civil liberties and the best path forward, but instead, the majority has decided to do otherwise. Waiting until the authorities are about to expire and then jamming this bill through committee with no time for debate and discussion is the very definition of undemocratic, and it's disrespectful to all Americans and to the Constitution. I do believe the Section 702 authorities are critical to our national security, and there is a true balance to be struck here. We are all here because we love our country, and we are all driven to protect it both for external national security threats and from internal weakening of our constitutional protections. This bill fails to balance those concerns, and so I must oppose it. I would like to yield the rest of my time to Mr. Himes.
Thank you, Ms. Spear, and I just want to honor Congressman Gowdy's observations. I agree with them wholeheartedly. He's right. There have been Republicans who have taken risks to acknowledge what you said about the tweet. And this is not fundamentally, I think, a partisan thing and shouldn't fundamentally be a partisan thing. And I want to reassure Mr. Rooney, though I'm unhappy with the process that has led us here today, and though we've had some heated words, I think the personal relationships on this committee are really important. I really want to distill the issue down to 2 points, though. Number one, and I think these are sort of unarguable, we all know what we do, and we all know that there are certain issues that are political dynamite. There just are. Unmasking is one of them. Benghazi is one of them. The possibility of collusion is one of them. And every time one of these items of political dynamite get put out there, MSNBC does what it does, Fox does what it does. We try our best, usually, to be staid and careful in talking about these issues, but they're political dynamite. We know that. My problem is we know that, and we're moving forward on a change to United States code on an issue that we all know is political dynamite without educating the American people one bit. Look, I'm open-minded. I think I've seen as much of the evidence as anybody up here. I'm open-minded. I'm not closed-minded to the possibility that there were improper unmaskings, but I'm not ready to jump to a conclusion because we haven't had the conversation. We haven't had that hearing, publicly or privately, and we've got disagreements. If we're disagreeing, how are we going to try to reduce the temperature on this issue of political dynamite for the American people? So my plea is not that Republicans be better or anything else. My plea is simply that we know this issue is political dynamite. Let's deal with it, but let's deal with it in a way that does justice to what we should be doing for the American people. Yield back.
Mr. Winstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.